Welcome to episode 7 of Dust War Journals. My name is Johannes Haglund, and with me today are
Magnus, known as Magoff or Magwis on the forums.
And Luda is back again.
And, we don't have that much news to talk about. It's been a little bit of a quiet month. There's been con season have started. We've seen a lot of reports on the Facebook groups and such from various conventions in the US primarily. There's some interesting parts that come out of that. I saw I think it was from the Gamma Expo, an interview with Gregor Busbalod, I think. I'm not sure about your last name pronunciation there, I'm sorry. But there was an interview with him from Sam Healy from the Dice Tower podcast.
Right.
Yeah, they were talking about some of the new releases and stuff going on. And Greg was talking about the new molding process that they're using for the new vehicles. I thought that was kind of fascinating. He was talking about, how the usual way you mold 3D stuff. You have two pieces and you put them together and you mold in between. Greg was talking about the new molds for the dust stuff is basically like a flower. So several pieces that kind of interlock together in some way. Sounds really fascinating. I would love to see more in depth of how that's done, because that sounds really cool.
And that's still on the Facebook, the link to this? Because I missed that one.
I think it is, yeah.
Great.
I think it is. I think we could probably find and isolate just that part pretty easily. Really fascinating, actually. We do have a small number of new releases. We have seen quite a few of the older units that now have got releases in new premium versions. So
right.
you got like some of the NDAC in winter in Sverograd style camo and such. But we have one completely new model or unit, and that's the Fallschirmjäger Mortar Squad. I think this is quite interesting, because if you compare that model stat-wise with the NDAC Mortar Squad, they're almost identical. It's the same point cost, it's the same weapon lines, it's almost identical except for the fact that the Fallschirmjäger version has the Airdrop or airborne rule.
Right.
And that is very interesting to me, because that says that I think we can confirm that the airborne rule can work as kind of a negative bonus as well as a positive. You can use it to your advantage, but it's hard. It's very difficult to use it as an advantage, so it can be a hindrance as well. And that's kind of how it looks like.
For a mortar squad, to me, it's a negative skill for a mortar squad, basically, for me, because you don't want to drop it like close to the enemy anyways.
Exactly.
Because it has minimum range 4. So usually you want to drop it, some way off from the enemy.
Yeah.
So, and you also risk losing an action there. So maybe you drop it and it doesn't do anything. So for me, it's a negative skill on the mortar squad.
It can be. Plus, it also the fact that the Fallschirmjäger faction as yet does not have any artillery observers.
Yeah, that's true.
You can of course use the observer squad, the Soldier 2 soldier squad, but that means you have to use the non-faction points for that if you want the faction bonus, and that can also be a little bit of a negative.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay for that point cost. I don't see any big problems with it.
So does that mean that they drop they have to observe when they drop? So they have to fire from above or something like that?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's from above. I've heard about that, It would be nice.
Yeah.
No, I'm just...
And we also had one kind of golden oldie back in a new version. We've had a new novel released. The first novel in what's going to be the Sverograd trilogy, I think they've called it. I think that's what I heard. It's supposed to be a trilogy.
Okay.
And this,
I missed that.
Yeah, and the first book in this series is focused on Winterchild. So we're going to learn a lot more about Colonel Ivan. And it also comes with a new version of the Winterchild model, a premium version. So this, I think most people have seen this on the forums or on the Facebook group or such. It's a walking version, so it's not on the flight stand anymore.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more lean. It's not as chunky as the old version, but still quite hefty. And it's still a really good
He's been
unit.
fighting for some time now, so maybe, lost some weight.
Yeah, he sees older. He seems older in the new model, and especially when you look at the cover of the book, I think he looks more worn, like the radiation or something. It's been tearing at him or something.
Could be.
Perhaps this is just a new take on the same character. I still like the older model better, because I thought the action-wise, when he was flying with the fists out and radiating people, it was so dynamic. But the more I look at this more war-torn, non-heroic, typically Russian hero for me, so it's growing. It's rapidly growing on me.
I see what you mean. It's less dynamic. It's less action-focused, but it's got a lot of personality. This new model, definitely. It's the same pose that's used for the Terrible Kid stuff, the resin statue version of Winter Child as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on this version of him.
Okay.
So that's pretty cool. And that's basically it for new stuff at the moment.
Yeah, I just hope they release the novel, as a single book that you could buy.
Yeah, separately. I would love that as well with the
Since-
old Blood and Thunder novel, because that's not available to purchase at the moment, which is unfortunate. I missed the train on that one. And I would very much like to have that in my collection. If we go to the Facebook group, there's been quite a lot of discussion recently about the Soldier 1 versus Soldier 2 kind of dichotomy that exists at this point. Ever since the Soldier 1 units really came into force with all the Kickstarter units, there's been a lot of talk about how Soldier 2 just not up to snuff anymore, and I think that's one of the points that we hoped that the new cards for 1947 would kind of address. And it seems like most people think that it didn't. So what do we think about that? There's been quite a lot of talk about that. Is it the point cost? Is it the fact that weapons are... The difference in efficiency if you attack Soldier 1 unit versus Soldier 2 unit isn't that great? What's the problem here?
It can be... I agree. First of all, I agree. I think that Soldier 1s are, in most cases, just plain better than Soldier 2. It's not that far. I mean, you can still play the Soldier 2s, but you see it. If you play a lot, and especially if you play tournaments, I would say you see a difference. That the Soldier 1s are better point for point.
Yeah, they're more points efficient. That's basically it.
Yeah, I know this, and I at first glimpse I agree. It's like it's a quicker fix to use. To me, the dynamic now is like before. I've always made the case that you want a quick fix, use the German army. If you want to do something strange or something, learn it by heart, use the Russian army. Now that of course isn't true, it's equal, but to me it's like, okay, you need to win quick, use the class 1 army type on the soldiers. And of course I'm just getting into the German players. The Russian player has no problem with playing Soldier 2, none whatsoever. But the German ones, well, I only use the, what would it call now, the old ghosts and stuff like that, and they are expensive, and I'm not winning easily. Perhaps I'm not winning at all with that army, but I'm getting close to it. I'm getting close to winning. The old ghosts, they've got the scout rule, and they got the possibility to get fire and move.
Yeah.
With the platoon rules.
Yes, absolutely.
And yes, 2 Vipers, or what they would call the deserts guys, they are better, and they should shoot out the ghosts. But to me, I'm starting to find the ghost more skillful and they can beat all opponents because they have the Panzerfaust.
Yeah, but still, there's like 5 guys for
Yeah.
10 points.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's-
For 1 point more,
Mm.
you can get 1 point of the formerly known unit African Lions and 1 unit of the Vipers. So that's 10 guys. They have 2 machine guns instead of 1. They have 5 Panzerfausts instead of 3. So what they lack is the scout rule, basically.
And
And they
fire
can
remote.
and they can get that from platoon rules.
So
Yeah, well, I don't know, but it's just it's at the first glance, yes, but when I'm playing them on the tabletop, I don't feel I lack anything. As I said before we started the show, now I gave away all my unduck this week to a friend. Okay, I got something back. I got something very funny thing back. So. Furry thing back or something. I mean, so I'm pleased, and I went in. It wasn't a Samaritan thing that I gave away my unduck, but I really did not feel like I needed them.
The thing that most people forget, I think, is that you're not supposed to play a Soldier 1 based army the same way as you're supposed to play a Soldier 2 army.
Yeah.
I think that's the way. The Soldier 1 armies, they kind of naturally funnel you towards playing very infantry heavy because the infantry are so points efficient. If you play a Soldier 2 based army, like the Red Guards or like the Wehrmacht, for example, then you have rather a lot more vehicles. And that's something that usually the infantry heavy Soldier 1 armies have difficulty fighting in some cases. So I think that's kind of how you have to think about it. You have to think about the whole army and how you're supposed to use all the parts of it, rather than just comparing unit to unit. Because if you compare unit to unit, then yes, Soldier 1 units are definitely better. But that doesn't mean that that's how it's going to shake out in the end.
No, I totally agree. It's just exactly that. Because also, as we were talking about beforehand, I was playing the Spetsnaz army with my Soldier 2 German Walker armies. And okay, the Spetsnaz won it, but it was a real killer Spetsnaz army with all the heroes, everything else. He was with a chopper, with a flamethrower, with Yakov. And so he was like on my HQ in the first turn with the flamethrower, grenade throwers, and every shit I had right in my face. Still, it was a close call that it could have been a draw. So, and to me, it was more about me having to learn. I'm not there yet. And it takes more out of you as a player to play Soldier 2. You need to think more. It's not an easy one, not a walk in the park. It's much more easier playing because they are better at first glance and because they have the potential. But I just feel there's something, as you said, Johannes, when you play it on the tabletop and you play it in with the platoons and you play it a different way. I mean, I was facing 3 weak class 2 walkers. I had 5 class 4 walkers. He had some problems dealing with my last Ludwigs, of course. Of course, I'm playing Ludwigs.
Of course. That said, do we want Soldier 2 to be better than they currently are?
it depends on how you look at it, where you want the balance in the game, basically. I would actually like to see a bit more vehicles than we usually see, and there's a lot of vehicles that, at least in our meta, don't get played at all, basically. So when I look at this, I have the distinct feeling that the Soldier ones are a bit too good as they are. So for me, I think the quick fix would be to basically raise their points by 1. Of course, there's a few units that don't need to get a point increase. For example, the command unit, probably. I can't remember.
But
it's
something
like 11 points or something.
Yeah,
and
but
that's fine because you don't.
But something like the unit formerly known as the African Lions.
Yes.
Yeah, 5 points is pretty ridiculous for those. I have to, and I use them in my armies because they're really, really efficient.
Yeah, and that combo, those units we spoke about them earlier. They are 5 and 6 points, if those were instead 6 and 7 points, they would still be good.
Yep.
But together they would be 13 compared to the goes for 10. Okay, now it's more interesting. Really.
Yeah.
And I have that feeling for a lot of the units actually. Not all of them, of course, but many of the Soldier 1 units, they should be like 1 point more expensive. And then they would be totally fine.
Wow.
Because I think that the Soldier 2s are very well balanced compared to a lot of the vehicles. I think their points ratio is fine in many cases actually.
That's a very good point, because that's mainly one of the reasons I use the African lines, because they have 5 Panzerfausts and they have Scout if you use the Christoph platoon, which means to have an effective threat range round 1 of 8 squares if you play gridded. And that means that if your opponent doesn't really think about how they're placing their vehicles, that 5-point unit can shoot out a walker up to like armor 4 or 5 first turn.
They can pretty much kill anything.
Yeah,
Almost.
basically. Yeah. And it's, I can see why people feel like that's unbalanced.
But a funny thing, only playing, of course, I don't know now how much damage we should have had the stat cards in front of us, how much damage the Fausts of the Endak ones, the ones you're talking about, how much damage they do to a Walker 4.
I think it's like 4 at least.
Yeah, because that's what's happened now that I've been playing against Spetsnaz. They do 5, and I take 6. So, in many cases now, in games, the last couple of months here, I have walked around with walkers with 1 point of wound left. And he's not getting me dead, because he gets his 1 shot, he's out, and then I wipe him, because he's just Soldier 1. But I totally understand your points.
And that's when you go in and use close combat, because you have 5 dice and you only retaliate with 1.
Of course, so. But you don't let them get that close.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
That's what you have to do. But I still hear your arguments. I have nothing against your arguments. I'm just thinking that a few games more, perhaps we will feel it a little bit different. But on the other side, of course, Soldier 2s has been around forever. Soldier 1 is you can call it the new thing. So it's not impossible that they have worked more with the Soldier 2 and have gotten the feel for this unit better in their body, in their soul. I mean, they lived and they breathed Soldier 2. I'm thinking about Olivier and everyone else who's involved with the rules. The Soldier 1s are a little bit newer. Perhaps they need some tweaking more. I'm not against that argument.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk like raising the number of dice against Soldier 1s to compensate, but to me, there's so many things that are still very lethal in the game, so it doesn't really change anything if you just raise the number of dice. It doesn't really matter. The thing you shoot on will probably die anyway. And many weapons still, they roll a lot of dice, so giving them even more, I don't think that would really make any difference.
But I've heard arguments being made for people playing Allied Soldier 2 that their dice against Soldier 1 Germans aren't point-wise, because they only have 1 or 2 dice so they don't. It's very hard for an Allied Soldier 2 to wipe the Germans. If I get a German in my face as a Soldier 1 and I'm playing German or Russian, he's dead. Okay, he might kill me as well, of course. I'm not saying he just dies because he plays me. I wish it were so. But but when I play an Allied army, or perhaps it's their thing then, it's much more harder. Remembering a game a few tournaments ago when I played Linus, who was playing Allied, and he managed. Okay, he had the one-eyed killing spree hero, Johnny One-Eyed, yeah, and a squad, but he managed almost to wipe my Regina and her killers she was coming in against him with. And I was like, what happened? I'm facing Allied Soldier 2. He's wiping my hero, my whole unit. I was taken aback, and perhaps it was a dice luck and something, but it didn't feel that. It felt like he just knew what he was doing. But it's very rare to face an Allied Soldier 2 and get frightened that he will wipe you. You know you have one or two guys left standing. So there, perhaps the dice...
Some kind of rebalancing might be in order, just for basically the Rangers subfaction.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's a point that we've seen, just something that you can fix, so to speak, without having to redo all the stats, is with the platoon rules. You have some kind of wiggle room there. If you give new platoons with specific rules to boost certain combinations, that might work.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, because they could. I don't know how you should phrase this, but I could see a Soldier 2 knowing we're better equipped, we're better armed, we are better, we can sustain attacks better than the Soldier 1s. We see Soldier 1 coming, therefore we roll an extra die. As always, we try to attack a Soldier 1 or something. I don't know.
Like they gain infantry ace on a roll of faction or something like that.
If playing a Soldier 1s or something like that, because they have more armor, they have more platings and stuff. They should survive better.
So it's kind of a morale boost in a way.
I don't know. Something like that could be... I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's... The rule book and the cards are fairly new still.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's probably going to be a while until it gets a real overhaul to kind of rebalance things. So, yeah, that's a really nice idea, actually, with platoon rules doing some cool things.
Yeah, because they said they were going to come out with multiple expansions, expansion after expansion of expansion, which is logical, of course. They make money on it and stuff like that. But and then they can just they can take the old platoons and make them reappear again, but with a small tweak. And now, after Condor, we see a new Ranger platoon. It's the same one, but with a little tweak, and that makes them a little better. Something like that could.
Yeah, I think that's an easier way to boost a specific part of an army rather than tweaking stat cards.
Exactly. Keep the cards, keep the everything, give them the possibility to be a platoon, specific boost, and things will work out. Because I'm starting to learn some of the platoons as well, and you find ways to boost units that you didn't think you could boost when you started. We've even started to realize how to stealth your SSU to victory. Yeah. Even though it felt ridiculous in the beginning, we have started to do ways to use
and
this.
There's also, I know for the allies, like the Rangers, they have this reserves rules in one of the platoons. And at the moment, there's no official scenarios that use reserves, basically. I think there's like maybe one or two or something in the book. One of those a little bit more complicated with different levels and stuff. So that platoon doesn't really get used that much, I guess. But I mean, if you get more official scenarios from the expansions with reserves, maybe they get some, really interesting.
Definitely. At the top of my head, just when you said that, I just thought, hey, I'm playing Rangers. Every time I play a Rangers platoon, there has to be 50% reserves. Boom. Me and the opponent have 50% reserves. Mine is coming in faster than yours. I get a super bonus.
Yeah.
Weaker shit units, but mine are out there faster. There's endless of possibilities. And of course, Olivier, you know all this, and you already thought about it, and you're just waiting for the right time to release them, because it has to be right with everything else you have to produce. But we're thinking here. So
we basically agree. We all look forward to the new cool stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Some other discussions that's been recently, well, recently isn't quite the right word in this case, basically, but there's something that's come up from time to time on the various forums, is whether people prefer to play on the grid or if they prefer to play the freeform game, and what are the actual differences between the two games. And I think that the differences are not that apparent, actually, if you just read the rules. If you just go by popularity, it seems quite even. I've seen a few polls on the Facebook group. I think the first time I saw it a few months ago, then there was quite a big push towards freeform. Most people voted for that. Then, I think 1 or 2 months ago, it popped up again, a very similar poll, and that time grid was running in the foreground. So I think that means that in actuality, the people actually playing pretty split even. I would probably think.
Yeah, that's the feeling I have as well.
And there's very, very different if you go to different gaming groups, of course. I mean, at the moment we mostly play gridded, but that's something that's relatively new. I mean, we played quite a lot of freeform back in the day, if you speak so like that. So
yeah, but many of us were coming from 40K, tired of the 40K, wanted something new. We were more freeform players, and basically, when I started playing Dust, I can admit it, I thought the squares were quite corny, stupid. It was not a pure game and stuff like that. But I had a few friends who didn't want to play tabletop, who didn't want to measure. They saw the miniatures and they went, "Whoa, I want to play with those." And so we put out the maps and we started playing the campaigns, and it was, of course, extremely fun. So I got hooked. And then we played both until the split with the Warfare became so-called independent, or what do we call it, on its own market. And it was not... And a few years, the non-gridded was not that well supported by the studio. And you got the feeling when you were on the Facebook page that it was not so okay to talk about the non-gridded. And because the non-gridded also didn't like the gridded, so it was kind of inflamed. Some debates were a bit,
unfortunately,
yeah. So I think it went like the non-gridded ones thought like, you're not playing a real game. We go play with ourselves, with our miniatures, whatever. But now it seems like actually the new rules might be breaching this, because...
Yeah, I think so. I think that's great, actually. I mean, it started basically in version 2 already with the battlefield, but there was still very much a distinction between them. Very different gaming mode, and now they are closer to each other. They are still different, of course, but still.
Yeah, they definitely are more similar, and there are some obvious differences if you just look at them quite shallow. The first thing that I think everyone notice is the fact that you play on a larger area if you play freeform. That's something I've seen a lot of people comment on, that wait a minute, 9 by 12 grid, that's not the same as a 6 foot by 4 foot table. How does this work? And that's the point. That's how it should be. Because the gridded version is supposed to be more compact. It's supposed to be a quicker, more swift, more bloody experience, basically.
Yeah, it's turn 1 action.
Yeah,
right from the start.
I saw that one guy on Facebook said that his experiences of freeform is basically the first 2 rounds are just positioning, and there's no actual fighting the first 2 rounds, and then the fighting starts on turn 3. And if you play gridded, you basically skip those 2 first turns, so you go directly to the carnage. And yeah, that's kind of true. And another thing that makes it faster is also the fact that you skip the measuring. Well, you count squares, but that's usually quicker. And it's more apparent that you can fire, you have line of sight, and
and I mean, you can count during your opponent's activation. If you play freeform, maybe you don't want to measure a specific thing, because you will, by doing that, you will let your opponent know what you will do in your next move, maybe. Yeah. So For me, I mean, I've been playing grids mostly, actually, I would say, since Dust came out. I played some Warfare a few years back, but mostly grid, actually, because when I started, I also, had played mostly like 40k and those kinds of games, and the grid looked really strange, so I was a bit skeptical in the beginning, but I think I quickly saw like the really pros of it. I mean, how fast it is, how easy it is, and it's really simple to get into.
And for me, I have basically the opposite experience. I came mostly from the board gaming world. The most tabletop I played before I started Dust was X-Wing. Mm-hmm. And that's also quite simplified version of a tabletop game. Yeah. And so for me, just the whole point that you don't have to use all the measuring, you don't have to think three-dimensionally in the same way. That was a big appeal. And now I've started to be more interested in that stuff because of Dust. So now I play Dust. I also have dipped my toe in a few other systems as well. I don't think I would have. So I blame you.
No, but it's true. It's also easier to get into a gridded game. So it's easier to play it when we made demos and we made tournaments and we try to get a bigger community. So it was almost 1.5 year. We only played gridded mostly, just because we wanted to grow the community to try to get more people into it. So it became logical. But I think also, I know people will hate me for saying this, especially true tabletoppers out there, and I know their arguments and I understand them completely. But I like the dot-to-dot with the unit leader, because I find
in Freeform.
Yeah, in Freeform. Sorry, I like it because I find that it makes it fast, it makes it flow, and I've actually had a few 300 pointed tabletop games, non-gridded, whatever, that has been quite quick. I've had a few also that has been 2 days long and stuff like that, or because we had too fun talking about other stuff. But it really, really fastened the game up.
Yeah, I agree. I have kind of the same experience there. I thought that seemed very, very strange when I read the rules for it. But now when I've actually tried playing Freeform with the unit leader as kind of the focal point for line of sight and that, it really works. I mean, of course it is simplified, definitely.
Oh, yes.
But I think that's a good thing, because the flavor of the game is still there.
Yeah.
You get the free movement.
Yeah.
You can get that cinematic thing when you go around the corner of a building and I see your walker fire, something like that.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, and we creep behind that hill and stuff like that, which doesn't really transcend, even though we try with the 3D buildings and stuff like that in gridded, and we're getting close, but you still get a little bit more panache or whatever you want to call it with a free stroke of the brush when you paint.
You still have to remember that it's a game. It's not a simulation of reality. So there's a lot of things in any game that is simplified and just to make the game flow better.
Yeah.
And in Dust, I think that they have focused on that point a little bit more than in a few other games. So they made it a bit more faster, a bit more simplified. And of course, some of the realism or whatever you want to call it, you have to get that out of the game to make it faster. So it's basically a choice they made when they made the rules, and I think it works. I think it's fine.
Definitely.
I have no problem with that, actually. So, but still, I prefer to play gridded anyway, mostly. So.
I think if we just talk about the differences between gridded and freeform, I think one thing that's to me very interesting is that not many people talk about is the kind of what I call emergent gameplay. That very small changes in the rule set can lead to very big changes in the actual game. And that's not very apparent if you just read the rules and look at the difference like that.
For example?
For example, just the fact that you're playing on a much larger area, that means that range is much more important.
Oh yes.
Right.
Certain skills have different values. Scout is not as important in Freeform as it is in Gridded. In Gridded, Scout is amazing and can really turn the tide from turn one. In Freeform, it's basically then it lives up to its name. You have one unit that scouts ahead and just looks at the enemy basically.
And gets killed faster.
Yeah,
That's what happens in non-gridded.
Exactly. It's not worth much. But at the other hand, at the double, that skill can be really useful. Because then you can move quite long distances, and that's something that you normally don't need to do that much when you play Gridded.
Exactly, when you play Gridded, it's a fairly small table, so you don't have to move that far.
Yeah, so at the double becomes almost useless when you play Gridded.
That's my assumption until recently, when the Spetsnaz has really unlocked that potential, because I was laughing at that platoon, I guess at the double, why do I want to be a 6 or 8 or 9 paces into the game board? He's just going to kill me. But now I've played a few Spetsnaz who have used that on me, and I kill that first Spetsnaz group, I kill the second one. But when the first turn is over, I still have 5 or 6 Spetsnaz guys, groups of guys, in my face. And now it's turn 2. They have all their rocket grenade launchers, and they have the flamers, and they have everything.
And suddenly they're in range to sustain fire.
Yeah, and I'm fucked. So I'm so happy that I've been surprised from something I thought this is shitty until... this is a great platoon. But of course, it's even better for the Spetsnaz in the non-gridded. That's when it really kicks in. You're absolutely right, Johannes.
So if we're going to take anything away from this, I think, do we prefer to play Gridded? Do we think that Gridded is a better game?
No. They are great games, both of them. Sorry, jumping in there.
It really depends on what you want from the game, and it also depends on the situation.
Yeah.
I would say for demoing the game, the Gridded is by far better.
Yeah.
In most cases. Sure, if you demo for a hardcore tabletop player, then fine, maybe they would prefer to play the Freeform. But in most cases, I would say the Gridded, especially for like non-gamers or board gamers or card gamers or whatever, it's much easier for them to get into the Gridded version.
Yeah, also with the size of the thing, also that it's two-dimensional if you want it. That's a argument we've used when we've demoed. I see the look in your eyes. You want to play Gridded, non-gridded. You want to play the big tabletops. But I know you have a small apartment and no space. Your wife won't let you. Fold away the maps. Put them in the back of the bookshelf. Pick them out when she's out with the dog. She won't even notice you played. No, sorry. But you get the drift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
But then also, just another rule, perhaps, that it is also so surprising the first time because you're so into it. You always leave the medic, the last guy standing, in your HQ, of course, because you always want to almost every time. First time with the new rules, playing the steel guards, 2 casualties, no problem. I take the mechanic, of course. He always dies first, we all know. But then, of course, and I take the commander because I have my medic left. He's gonna... Oh, fuck. I can't take my commander. I have to take the medic.
Yeah.
Now I have 1 commander left on the field who has to run and hide. Because even if he's steel guard, he has to stay alive to give me orders because this is vital for my army. So he would just went...
That's when you need your ambulance.
Yeah, that's what you do. Because then I had a German fire, the laser...
the Blitz.
Yeah, the Blitz was after him. So he was running. The Blitz was coming after almost. And all the Russians are after the Blitz trying to shoot it down. It was very comical.
North by Northwest, like flashing in my head.
So your Steel Guard commander is trying to outrun the Blitz. Good luck with that.
The Blitz were strafing him back and forth, I would say, and the other Russians were trying to save the command.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
that's just a small rule change that just different
Makes
game.
a big difference in the
Yeah.
end. Yeah. Right, let's go talk some tournament talk.
Yes, tournaments.
And we have, of course, I think this is the last time we're going to talk about it this year. We have a big, in the last time we're going to make any
announcement beforehand.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it afterwards for
Of course.
months to come.
Dust Nordic, of course, our big tournament coming up Easter weekend. So just a few weeks from now when we record it.
Yes.
We're finalizing all the things. Price support. We're going to build our boards. Ludwig's right now and building buildings.
Yeah, the strange noises you might be hearing in the background here is me carving in foam cards and making small. Should I say what I'm making, or should I just say bring your life vest? Because
Yeah, basically.
there's
And
gonna be
watch
water.
out for squid.
Yeah, squids are dangerous on one of the boards. Okay, sorry. Back to topic, please, Jonas. But we are preparing.
Yeah,
Yes,
of course.
full preparation, finalizing everything. It's going to be great. Great time. We have the tournament pack is up. It's almost time to send in all the army lists.
Yeah, there's still time for anyone who's still kind of on the fence. If you want to join, there's still time.
Yeah.
Mhm. And if it's anything that holds you back, please send us a mail, post something on the Vikings website, because perhaps we can help you with just that thing. You don't have accommodation. If that's the turning point, perhaps one of us can house you. You don't know how to get to Gothenburg. The internet is not working. We call you. No, but seriously, if we can
there's,
help you.
Still time
Yeah.
when we record this for people to participate. Just let us know or go to the website and sign up.
Yeah. Then we have another big event coming up in June that I think at least a few of us are going to attend. I think at least me and you, Ludde.
Yeah.
I don't think you had the opportunity, Magnus, I think, this year.
Well, the 17th is my wedding anniversary, so
What a great way to celebrate.
I think my wife would like another present, actually.
A trip to
Sorry.
Poland!
Sorry, but I will not be going to Warsaw this year. I hope maybe next time.
But we're talking about the Dust European Championships in Warsaw. It's going to be June 17th and 18th. And we're looking very much forward to this. It's going to be the third year in a row for us, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's we're really looking forward to it. The Poles have been very accommodating. It's been great tournaments
Great
so far.
guys.
That's the only thing that makes me, hesitate perhaps or something. Is that first year it was great. Second year it was even better. This year we're expecting a lot when we go to Poland.
Yeah.
I tell you. And when you look at the pictures of what they've been posting and how they seem to be growing with their
The player base. Yeah.
their boards, with their scenery, with their painting, everything. It just gives you the feeling that that could be a super tournament. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, they're doing. I'd say that the Polish scene is very visible, at least from what they do on Facebook and on forums and such. And even if there are other groups that are as active, I think the Poles are doing a very good job of advertising themselves.
Definitely they are. But since we are not, I'd like to just to mention as well that if anyone doesn't know what they're going to do in May, there's also, of course, the Swedish Masters in Linköping.
That's true.
Yeah. So
Right,
don't forget
big
that.
tournament.
Yeah. Well, it's nothing like the Dust Nordic. Nordic is the thing to be at. But if you still wonder what you're going to do, and you guys, you know the
and
date for that.
If you for some reason can't make it to Dust Nordic, you can
please pop
Choose
by
the second
Linköping.
best. Go
Yeah.
to Lincoln.
Precis. Exactly.
And the same thing applies there. If there's anything you want to know about that event, about that tournament, don't hesitate to get in contact with us. I'm sure we can help you.
Definitely,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So take lots of chances if you want to play us, if you want to just meet us, shake our hand, kiss us on the cheek, whatever you want to do. There's quite a lot of opportunity.
You're working for Deerhood, or what are you? But it's okay with me. We can have a little shrine for Johannes at Nordic. We just have to sculpture the right miniature.
Yeah, of course. Right. And that said, I think that's it for this episode. So I'd like to say a big thank you from me, Johannes.
Big thank you from Ludda.
And from Magnus as well.
And we'll all see you on the battlefield. All music used in this podcast is by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. If you want to get in contact with me and this podcast, you can email dustwarjournals@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at dustwarjournals.